a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It is honors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change.
I wanted to explain a little bit about what it means to be the chaplain of the Warden Service for anybody who may not know. So we're talking game wardens, not prison wardens. That seems important. And game wardens in the state of Maine it varies from state to state, but in the state of Maine, game wardens are empowered like state troopers, but they work off the sidewalk. So their primary enforcement responsibility is fish and wildlife law, which is how many deer you can kill and what gender they have to be and whatever. And I don't have a lot to do with that because it doesn't involve death to people. Deer, yes, but not people. But they also respond to a variety of calamities that happen in the woods and freshwater of Maine. So that's freshwater drownings, boating accidents, people getting lost in the woods for various reasons. Homicides and suicides often have a wildland dimension in Maine because we have a lot of wildland. And snowmobile accident. So for things like that, they like to have the chaplain come with them to support the family, to be present with the family as they kind of either are waiting to find out about their loved one or are taking the first steps in grieving for their loved one. So it's a lot of grief and loss, but which makes it sound like not a great job, but it really is. Does anybody in here do hospice work? Yeah, okay. So you know what I mean, right? Yeah, okay. It's like that. Hospice in the woods. But so anyway, that is sort of important for you to know. It may also be important for you to know just that law enforcement in Maine, there's so few law enforcement officers relative to the size of the state that we all kind of show up for everything. So as a chaplain, I've now responded to a total of 4 mass shootings, including Lewiston, and then I went to Sandy Hook, and then 2 others, which depending on how you count, what you count as a mass shooting. So, and I went because my guys went, because everybody goes. So, I went to help. So it's like that. And one of the things I do when I'm out in the woods with the game wardens is I tell jokes, and apparently I tell them badly. So you'll have to bear with me because I'm going to tell you a joke. So one day, a sheep went for a walk and she fell off a cliff. Bummer. Fortunately, she was an unusually agile sheep, and as she fell, she managed to hook on to the branch of a tree that was precariously rooted into the smooth cliff face. So there she was, dangling from this branch by her forelegs, hundreds of feet up above the ground. No way to climb down, no way to climb up. The sheep baaed upward toward the top of the cliff. Hey, baa, is there anyone up there? Nothing. After a few more minutes, the sheep tried again. Baa, baa, I'm in kind of a pickle. Baa. Nothing. Baa, is there anyone up there? And lo and behold, she heard an answering voice. Deep and resonant, yes, I am here, it said. Oh, fabulous, said the sheep. Listen, I'm hanging from a branch down here. Could you get a shepherd's crook or a rope or something and pull me up? No. "Do just as I say," said the voice. "I won't let you fall." "Okay, but I'm getting kind of tired. Could you speed things up a bit?" "I am the Lord your God. I am with you. Let go of the branch." What? "Fear not, have faith. Let go of the branch." Well, the sheep thought about it for a moment. She looked down at the ground hundreds of feet below her. She looked up at the edge of the cliff. "Let go of the branch." And instantly she converted to Unitarian Universalism and said, "Is there anyone else up there?" When we, like sheep, have gone astray and are in need of proximate rather than ultimate salvation, when the words I have fallen or "I have lost my way" are literal rather than metaphorical descriptions of our plight, we do hope that someone, an actual human being, will show up and help. A man or a woman in the midst of a real crisis is not picky about who shows up at the top of the cliff, as I have learned firsthand from my work as a chaplain. Catholics, Jews, atheists, New Agers, Pentecostal Christians, and for that matter, resentful ex-convicts with a rap sheet as long as your arm, all these folks who would ordinarily disdain a middle-aged Protestant lady minister wearing a uniform and a badge, all of them turn out to be able and wonderfully willing to make use of me when they or someone they love is lost, drowned, dying, dead. I do wish sometimes I was the sort of miracle worker who could just wave my magic wand and say to the suffering and the fearful, "Let go of the branch," instead of, "I'll stay with you and keep you company," while the game wardens fetch their gear. It's the game wardens who can at least try to effect the actual salvation that's really desired and prayed for. And that's a wonderful and humbling thing to get to bear witness to. Men, mostly men, with equipment and practical skills and loving courage, showing up at the edge of the cliff, the edge of the forest, the edge of the ice, and making a miracle happen for a total stranger. It's probably obvious, but I love my game wardens. A chaplain colleague of mine the other day said, a good shepherd had better smell like sheep. Jesus smelled like sheep. Jesus smelled like sheep and like tax collectors and prostitutes and paralytics and blind beggars and centurions. He smelled like the tears of distraught mothers and the sweat of frantic fathers. He stank of sinners and sickness and sorrow. The good shepherd smells like sheep. I like that. I'm not the pastor, the shepherd of a church. I'm just a chaplain. But I'm often asked to speak and teach in various churches, the way I am today, and all kinds of churches: Methodist, Baptist, Episcopalian, Lutheran, Jewish. And I was in a northern American city not too long ago, presenting a day-long workshop on grief and loss at a Unitarian Universalist church for a group of perhaps 100 women. And most of the women were about my age, give or take a decade. Nice, middle-class, middle-aged ladies who spoke a language littered with shared references: the Carter administration, Mary Oliver, Toni Morrison, and Whole Foods. And I was talking about being a law enforcement chaplain in Maine because I really don't have much else to talk about. Specifically, I was telling my audience about how much I have learned about love from the law enforcement officers I work with. I told the story of a young Skowhegan, Maine police officer who was the first responder to arrive at the scene of a house fire. He literally crawled through fire to save the lives of a young mother and her baby who had been trapped inside. Love. I said, see, love and service and self-sacrifice. Courage. One of the nice middle-aged, middle-class ladies in the front row was frowning, like really frowning, scowling at me. This happens to me sometimes, but only in Unitarian Universalist churches. Nowhere else do I produce such wrath. The woman set her jaw and, flinging her attractive natural fiber shawl more firmly about her shoulders, she asked what she clearly believed would be a rhetorical question. Would that cop have crawled through fire to save the mother and child if they had been black? I said, well, I don't know. The police officer was black. The mother and the child were white, but I don't think any of them were thinking about that at the time. They were in love, right? Local love. Love here and now, not abstract. So that police officer smelled of smoke and fear. He stank the way true saviors do. So how do you love the wayward sheep? Would you rather not get the smell of wool and grease and manure on your hands? The contemptuous tone of the woman's voice, the one in the front row at that workshop, the way she asked her question, would he have saved the mother and child if they had been black? I'll admit that hurt and haunts me. Though she probably wouldn't phrase it this way, being a Unitarian Universalist, I think that woman probably counts herself a shepherd. Not as the shepherd, of course, but certainly as one of the good people who are in the midst of saving the world with their love. And I imagine some guy dangling from that branch 100 yards of air between his feet and the ground. Help, he cries out, give me your hand. And the woman hears him, and she says, are you a police officer? Yes, I am. And she replies with that fastidious contempt in her voice, let go of the branch. How do we love the wayward sheep? Should we love them at all? If it's a bad person, a mass murderer, say, who's dangling from the branch, wouldn't walking away or dropping a stone or two on his head feel justified? If he is or has been designated literally Hitler, why would you try to rescue him? Especially if you might end up smelling like him. I read a book recently by a young woman named Abby Johnson, who for 8 years was the manager of a Planned Parenthood clinic in Texas. Almost said Tulsa. Texas. She'd been brought up in a Pentecostal church, Christian church. Abby was a regular at Sunday services until she started working for Planned Parenthood. Then her pastor found out what she did for a living, and she was kicked out of the Pentecostal Christian church. So she and her husband began attending an Episcopal church up the road, the one known locally to be the pro-choice church, and she was welcomed. At the clinic where she worked, Wednesdays and Fridays were procedure days, and on those days, pro-life protesters would appear without fail, bright and early. They'd stand outside the fence at the edge of the property, carrying their signs and praying and attempting to talk to patients as they arrived for their appointments. Sometimes the protesters actually managed to persuade a woman to turn around and head for the crisis pregnancy center up the street. More often, they were ignored. But the protesters kept showing up week after week, and Abby, the clinic manager, got to know some of the regulars pretty well. If nothing else, she admired their sheer tenacity. And because they were always polite and friendly to her, she returned their greetings. Now and then they had actual conversations, if only of the sort that began, do you think it's going to rain? Or Will the Cowboys win the Super Bowl? No. And when she had a baby herself, they expressed sincere and unironic joy. One day, one of the protesters, a young woman about Abby's age, asked her to have lunch with her at a nearby diner. And Abby expected the protester to just harangue her. But they had a pleasant meal, talking about their toddlers and their college days and their plans for the future. And more time passed, years passed. And Abby and the protesters continued to have what was, for Abby, a disorientingly friendly relationship. After all, she thought they were wrong about the issue. The pro-lifers presumably believed that Abby was complicit in murder. Then one day, Abby, again, an administrator, not a clinician or provider, medical person, Abby was asked to assist during the termination of a 12-week pregnancy. The ultrasound technician was out sick that day, so Abby was asked if she would just hold the instrument on the patient's abdomen so the doctor could see the image of the fetus on the screen. Unfortunately, this meant that Abby also saw the image of the fetus on the screen. Little recognizably human creature kicking its little legs. And she saw the fetus die. And that was it. She walked out of the clinic into the arms of the pro-life protesters who had been there week after week for 8 years. They smelled like sheep. Or maybe she smelled like sheep and they smelled like shepherds. The pro-life pastor at the Pentecostal church had not wanted to smell like sheep. And when the pro-choice Episcopal congregation found out that Abby had changed her mind about abortion, they kicked her out of the congregation. No sheep smell was going to cling to them. Now, this isn't a story intended to change your mind on choice, by the way. Instead, I'm just thinking about those pro-life protesters. Patiently, they showed up and showed love for Abby, despite believing heart and soul that what she was doing was evil. They did not despise her. They didn't shun her. They didn't speak of her or to her with scorn. They loved her, even when she should not have seemed lovable at all. And in the end, from Abby's point of view at least, they saved her. As Unitarian Universalists, we claim to honor the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We claim to be tolerant of different ideas, different ways of seeing the world. We love beyond belief. Well, the pseudonymous psychologist Scott Alexander has questioned those who, like us, claim tolerance. They say that they are tolerant because they do not despise gays, lesbians, bisexuals, asexuals, people of other races, transgender people, Jews, but ask that same person a simple question, he says, like, what's wrong with gay people? The answer will be immediate. There's nothing wrong with gay people. What do you think I am, some kind of homophobic bigot? Which is great. But then you aren't actually tolerating anything or anybody. You've mistaken tolerance for approval and acceptance. The word tolerance implies that there's something to tolerate. I like Alexander's definition of true tolerance. It is respect and kindness shown to members of an outgroup. Not respect and kindness towards members of what other people would define as an outgroup, but rather respect and kindness towards people that are out of your group, as you yourself define it. That definition reflects Christian values like grace and charity, both of which imply there's something for God or your neighbor to forgive, something that must be tactfully overlooked in your relationships with others. When there is nothing to forgive, nothing to overlook, no patience required, there's no tolerance, there's no grace, there's no charity. There is, and let's face it, this is the attraction of intolerance, there is no stink of sheep. Tolerance is such a low bar. And too often, I don't even manage to clear that one, let alone to clear the higher higher bar of steadfast, faithful, self-sacrificing love. This coming Wednesday might bring ashes to some foreheads or bright hearts in your mailbox. But either way, it can be a week about love. The easy kind where we love the lovable, and the hard kind where we love our irritating, unattractive, obnoxious, ignorant, tiresome neighbor who has all the wrong bumper stickers on his car, where we love him as ourselves. This is the gift and the challenge of love. And we are offered so many chances to serve and save, witness and wait. The chance to be the shepherd who does not privilege the cleanness of his own hands over the saving of the sheep. The rescuer who does not stop searching, trying, showing up. The one who does not lose faith. You know, a preacher preaches what the preacher needs to hear. So this is my prayer for myself today, and for you if you think you need it. Oh God, let me reek of grass and lanolin, grain and hay. May my hands be dirty, really dirty, and may my tired boots track honest manure across the threshold when at last I have let go the branch and fallen home to you. Amen.